Yes, that's right. In today's video, we'll be 100%ing Pokemon Rangers Shadows of Almia. That means we'll be completing the main story, every side quest, and the browser. That was how I would sound like with the energy of a pure, unadulterated, contemporary content creator. Some would argue that the energy would be better for audience retention, but I've got the energy of a 40-year-old thinking about retirement. So, hello. Continuing the line of Pokemon Ranger games, here we are at the Almia region, the place where the direct sequel to the first Pokemon Ranger game takes place. In case that you drop by this video without any prior knowledge to this game series, I'll do a quick rundown. Pokemon Ranger is the game where we are given the role of a ranger, a sort of cross between a park ranger and a police officer, according to its bubble page. Rangers opt not to employ the use of Pokeballs and use these devices called capture stylers instead, developed by this ancient man called Professor Hastings. To temporarily capture Pokemon with the capture stylers, we would draw loops around the target Pokemon, conveying our feelings of friendship around it. Also, this is the game that would probably wreck your DS touchscreens. Just an early heads up, I won't be covering the extra missions on this video. Well, more like I wasn't able to, but sit tight, I might be able to do it in Guardian Signs. And as expected, I wasn't able to shamelessly milk out 100 hours of content from this game. The whole thing took less than 21 hours. That was also being generous with the time I spent in-game, seeing as I wasn't in any hurry finishing everything. Well, I won't rattle on anymore. I'm trying to keep the intro shorter. Sub and fiddle with the bell if you like the content, as well as fiddle with the keyboard to leave a comment. All these actions will indeed fiddle with the algorithm. The game threw us right into the fray, instructing us to capture this lonesome Pikachu. The mechanics in Shadows of Almia differ slightly compared to its predecessor, with Pokemon battles boasting a health bar instead of the number of loops required for a capture. The capture also finishes right after the bar fills up, making getting extra EXP no longer viable. Right. Please ignore some of these graphical glitches. Some games don't fully work with this, DS. We were quickly introduced to our new class, where we met three notable characters: Rhythmi, the girl who aspires to be an operator; Keith, our classmate who was great with a styler, aspiring to be a top ranger; and Isaac, the brainiac of the bunch. Our class was taught by Miss April, and the class next door was headed by Mr. Kincaid. Kincaid? Kinsaid? Kinchaid? I have no idea. We learned about target clears with Rhythmi, and solved the Spidoof outbreak at the school. I thought we were doing pretty well with the captures, but I guess the game scripted it so that Keith will always be the victor of this little contest. As a new student, we were subjected to a customary test of courage, and witnessed Isaac and Mr. this one, deep in research in the middle of the night. Not suspicious at all. The outdoor class was next, where Crawford had to entertain a bunch of brats. Crawford himself is a graduate of the Ranger School, so it was a good experience overall for the students. The outdoor class had to be cut short because of an emergency, so off went Crawford. Our little sister also sends us letters every now and then, so that was very sweet of her. Reading these was always a heartwarming touch. She told us that our family was moving to Almia, wanting to be closer to us. We had to clear Keith's name sometime after that, with Mr. Kincaid being unreasonably adamant that Keith had stolen the school's capture stylers. Keith was of course innocent. We went on with life at the school for a bit more after that, meeting various characters that we would often meet later on in the game, like little Tim here. I think Shadows of Almia does a very good job of setting up its world building, effectively growing attachment to the people and places bit by bit. Together with Keith, we had to go on our one-day internships. We had to intern at Vientown's Ranger Base, the place where Crawford was stationed. It was empty when we got there, and we were assigned a super important mission by the receptionist. This delivery mission turned out to be everyone's lunch, and we all had a grand old time. We met Leader Barlow, Luana, Elaine, and Crawford. The lunch had to be cut short due to some Pokemon going wild, so off we go to de-escalate the situation. This part of the game is actually where we could choose our partner Pokemon, so I went with the Pachirisu. I really think the Pachi is the best out of the three. We couldn't really take the Pachi with us though, because we were still a student. With this, we ended our one-day internships and went back to school. Graduation day. Time went by so quickly. We were chosen as a student rep, about to give our speech, but then two Tangrowths had to ruin it for us all. This battle was our first official boss battle. The capture was still pretty easy though. We solved the crisis, gave the speech, and formally graduated. We went to Chicola Village to visit our new house and talk to our family for a bit. And off we go to Vientown, our first post as a Pokemon Ranger. Our first job was to deliver newspapers. Being a Pokemon Ranger wasn't as exciting as it sounded, eh? Well, things picked up soon enough after that, with a disturbance reported in a cave near Vientown. We were assigned to be on the mission together with Crawford, and we found a strange machine ominously pulsing. It seemed to be hypnotizing the Pokémon nearby, making them unavailable for captures. We destroyed the machine and had Big Bertha carry the machine to the base. Shadows of Almia introduced the quest system, so off we went to help little Tim with his Miltank. The next day, we woke up to a forest fire, not exactly the slowest of mornings. Alongside Luana, we braved through Vienne Forest and doused burning logs scattered around the area. We caught this Blastoise and used its Rain Dance field move, a first for the series. Usually a target clear would involve a specific, target, but this type of field move affects a large surface area instead. The team was able to apprehend the person responsible for bringing the machine to the forest and low-key, tortured him. Before the Rangers did that though, we were promoted to Ranger rank 2. Since the story is a fair bit longer in this game, the rank ups are also far and few in between. And as it should be, it really felt like we earned the promotions. While the others were thinking of a name for this guy, we went ahead and completed some more quests around Vientown and the forest. There were quite a few, so it took the better part of an hour or so. We met Professor Hastings again, and the prehistoric man pointed out that he too saw the strange machines over at Pueltown. He would examine the machine over at Vientown's ranger base, and we were to investigate Pueltown with Luana. Luana was pretty cool, but Solana's still best girl. Upon our arrival in Pueltown, we discovered that there were a ton of these machines lying around, hypnotizing all the town's Pokémon. From what we could get out of these shifty guys, apparently these machines were called a Gigaremo. We went around town destroying all of them and ended up in a boss fight with Team Dimsan's admin. Yep, from Team Gorok to Team Dimsan. Gotta love this series, man. The admin sent in a Toxicroak for the boss fight, but it was nothing special. They scram upon the defeat, carrying the gold Gigaremo unit. We finished some more quests lying around Pueltown before heading back to Vientown, and I find that this is a really good way to maintain a rather fresh feel throughout the game. It also lessens the backlog of quests that we'll have to do later in the post-game, as well as the completion of the browser. A rough pattern that I observed playing this game was that after every major mission, about 4 quests would pop up. In any case, we went back to Vientown and reported our deeds, leaving more questions about the aim of Team Dimsan. Big Bertha dropped by and played the good cop, finally getting word out of the criminal who set the forest on fire. It was an accident apparently, and we all worked together untying his ropes. He was deemed innocent enough during this whole case and was set free. We did more quests, gained a new partner Pokemon, and continued on with the story. Primeval Man Hastings found some black stones inside the Gigaremo he was studying and took it to the Ranger Union for further research, taking Barlow with him. We were instructed to go to Pueltown and lower the drawbridge, with the search eventually taking us deep into Puel Sea. This area was honestly really cool. It was quite refreshing to be able to explore the deep sea and meet its Pokemon. This Sharpedo, however, was a bit less than fun. This really took me a good while. We found the key that opens the drawbridge's control room and lowered the bridge to allow access. Upon our return to land, we were promoted to Ranger rank 3 by Barlow. Thanks, big man. After this whole effort, we crossed the bridge to find the myth, the legend, the hero of the first game, Murph. Oh, and we also met Isaac again. There was this tour of Ultra Inc., as well as the entrance of Blake, who couldn't be a more obvious villain. We then made our way to the Ranger Union, where we had to soak the red Gigaremo unit to demonstrate the preferred method of annihilation. We just wanted to go back home to Vientown, but another emergency popped out of nowhere. This time we had to go to Peril Cliffs upon the report of shady activities. We went through the area, which was nothing short of perilous, and finally reached the boss part of this whole segment. If you look closer, the machine the admin was using was a lot smaller, hence the name Mini Remo. This is a Gigaremo, this is a Mini Remo. Moving right along. Barlow took one of the Rampardos and we took the other one. This fight could be tricky, but just keep your cool and be patient. There were a lot of openings for this fight. In our journey to become a top ranger, this fight should be nothing more than a slightly uncomfortable fart. Upon the completion of the mission, we were promoted to Ranger rank 4 immediately on the field. Thanks again, big man. Another story mission done and more quests to do. We also gained the ability to ride on Doduos, so that's nice. There were a few Pokemon species that I missed the last time out at Puel Sea, so we headed back down there via Pueltown's harbor to do some exploring. It's good to know that we had to ride the currents once more to catch this Luminion. I'm kidding, it's not really good to know. I hate this part. We came back to the base a good chunk of time after, and was told by acting leader Crawford to head back to the Ranger School. He thought it was a good time for us to become the teacher for this batch's outdoor class, so we had to bear some time answering benign questions from the kids. The outdoor class, of course, had to be interrupted by a pair of dim sum grunts, resulting in a fairly easy ass whooping. With that, we earned the admiration of all the students. Over at Fiore, it seemed Keith was doing some good. Not as good as us, though. So, Barlow went off-grid, not the good self-sufficient kind, though. His stylers seemed to have been deactivated, so all the rangers in Vientown were pretty worried. We were tasked to go find Barlow, last seen in the Boyland volcano. We got on the boat to Boyland and witnessed some kind of reflune migration. After a short report to the elder at Boyland, we ventured deep into the volcano in search for Barlow. Boyland volcano is chock full of new field moves, like this reflune pass over here. I actually really appreciate the Team Dim Sum antics here. I respect the hustle, boys. I would have done the same thing were I in their shoes. We found Barlow being detained by 2 million grunts, and we had to get through this stupid stealth segment in the game. I love this game, don't get me wrong, but let's be real here. Who gave this part the green light? After a bit of exploring here and there in the cargo ship to complete the browser, we freed this Electabuzz that was trapped and used it to light the room Barlow was at. Barlow demonstrated his infamous field target move, and we stumbled upon a room that reeks of perfume. The game wasn't even trying to hide the next boss at this point. We fought through a gauntlet of grunt battles on the deck, witnessing the smuggery of Mr. Kincaid all the while. Barlow couldn't beat Kincaid, so we had to take matters on our own hands. Kincaid sent out his Drapion, which, to be fair, was the hardest fight so far, but if you stay reserved and patient at first, you'd see the Drapion's patterns quite well. Treat this as a Dark Souls boss and you'll be good to go. Let's just ignore the minuscule amount of health I have left over here. I made a mistake sticking with Granados as my partner Pokémon. Kincaid released one of the valves on the ship, causing it to go out of control, and it was up to us to steer it to safety. Well, relative safety. There wasn't much of a choice in this short time span. With a countdown ticking to make things a lot more tense, we headed back down near the entrance to perform a target clear on this valve, putting it back over the hole. The ship crashed on the tiny pier near the ranger school, and we were able to save all the Pokémon left on the cargo ship. It was mission clear, and Barlow seemingly had left this letter for us after the mission. That's right, we were now a top ranger. Ranger Union, here we come. Vientown's base and our family celebrated, sending us off on a very heartwarming note. Now what happens when you become a top ranger, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. We get a new top ranger walk, top ranger swagger, top ranger riz, top ranger oomph. Just kidding, nothing has really changed. It's more like growing up into an adult per se. You get more freedom in life, but you get an equivalent amount of responsibility in exchange. Keith was also promoted to a top ranger at the same time, so it was nice to see a familiar face around. We met chairperson Emma and Wendy, and of course, Murph, the goat. Oh, and Rhythmi is now an operator at the Ranger Union too. The whole gang's back together. For our first mission as a top ranger, we had to back up Sven, another top ranger who was being hindered by Team Dim Sum grunts over at Chroma Ruins. Chroma Ruins was a fairly long area, so it actually took a lot more time than I would have liked. We met up with Sven, unleashed this beast upon the world, and went even deeper into the ruins. The boss battle here, the Spiritomb, is probably one of the most annoying boss battles in the game. But again, the key to beating these boss battles is just staying patient. The opportunity will come. Another key is also Pachirisu. Hands down, best assist in the game. Right, the plot. Team Dim Sum wanted control over all Pokémon in Almia, so they required this black ominous stone from the cave to power their Gigaremo and Miniremo units. We were too late in stopping Team Dim Sum from obtaining the stone at the end of the cave, and was not so pleasantly surprised to find that one of our former classmates joined Team Dim Sum as a grunt. He turned over a new leaf pretty quickly right after joining though. Now he lives at this abandoned building in the middle of nowhere. We also found a diary, so back to the HQ we go. A lot of quests were popping out, so we finished them on our way back to the Ranger Union. There was quite a lot to do actually. The quests were all over Almia, starting from Pearl Cliff to all the way in Boyland. Upon our arrival back at the Ranger Union, we had done enough to be promoted to Ranger Rank 5. Good times. There were more quests available after this mission clear, so back to work we go. We gotta keep Almia safe, folks. Shame on Keith though, he was just following us the whole time without doing anything. Shame on Keith. We went back to the Ranger Union to check on the diary deciphering progress. Not much had been done really. We went to Ultra Inc. to gather some intel, watched a live rehearsal of the previous game's villains, and finally witnessed a bit of progress in the story. The diary was written by Ultra's second president and mentioned a fair bit about the black stones, now dubbed shadow crystals, that power the Gigaremo. Murph's pendant started shining, meaning our boy Murph here finally got a significant role in the game, at least for a bit. Following the lead from Murph's pendant, we had to track down Murph's father, who turned out to be the one who had given Murph the pendant containing a piece of the blue gem. The crystal was located at the end of Almia Castle, a huge abandoned castle located at the northwestern end of Almia. Getting there was no simple feat, as it involved riding a floatsail as a new field move, crossing this field of ice, and getting through an ice block current maze on the Empoleon. Unfortunately, Team Dim Sum had beaten us there, but getting past the grunts was always easy. We went through the whole castle, which had some pretty difficult areas to be fair, and finally got to the end. We faced off against Team Dim Sum's ice, easily getting the upper hand against his Frostlass. After capturing 2 Riolus in the castle, we reached a place where the blue gem was located and had to battle this Lucario to gain respect. Thus, Lucario's sudden jumping movements was probably the trickiest part of the battle, but it was nothing our Pachirisu couldn't stop. We gained the respect of the Lucario and was granted the blue gem. Upon checking our quest log, it seemed like more quests had popped up, and so we braved these first before heading back to the Union. Gotta do these bit by bit for the completion of the game. These quests also power up our styler, so it's definitely worth doing. Once we arrived back at the Union, we were granted Ranger rank 6 by Chairperson Emma. At the top of the Ranger Union building, Primordial Man Hastings ran a bunch of experiments and found that the blue gem does indeed decrease the Shadow Crystal's power. It wasn't enough, however, as the blue gem alone lacked the power to fully subdue the Shadow Crystal. It turned out Rhythmi and Linda's pendants started shining too, with their pendants containing 2 pieces of crystals given by Sven. Apparently, these 2 pieces are a part of 2 other gems that would help subdue the Shadow Crystal. Sven, you dog. Not the most desirable dog behavior, but a dog nonetheless. After a few quests, we went to Boilan Volcano Cave to retrieve the red gem. It's different than the cave we went to first, it's right next to it. New field move action here as we captured this Torkoal and rode it around to get past the abundance of lava in the cave. The game definitely ramped up in difficulty here, both in the captures and on-field elements. Making our way through the cave was no walk in the park, we had to be really careful. Though for some parts I would rather just brute force my way through. Levana stood and waited for us at the end of the cave, but her Infernape really didn't step up enough to be able to stop us. Just a short walk behind her, a Heatran guarded the red gem, ready to test our competence. The only annoying thing about this boss fight would be the on-field elements during the capture, but that could be circumvented by simply drawing around the obstacles. This fight should be easier than the Lucario one. We gained the Heatran's respect and acquired the red gem. One more gem to go, but first we had quests to do. We slowly chipped away at the abundance of quests in Almia and gained even more partner Pokémon. About 6 quests later, we returned to the Ranger Union for another promotion. We were now a Ranger rank 7. We still needed the yellow gem, so we had to haul our butts all the way to Haruba Desert. Apparently Keith was already there, but he seemed to be taking too long. On our way to Puel Town, we managed to witness the current president of Ultra Inc. being an absolute wank stain. He made the Gorok quads look like saints. For a villain, he sure didn't say much up until this point. We hopped on the boat to head to Haruba Desert, but encountered an anomaly in the middle of the ocean. It turned out to be a Wailord, wailing in pain due to Team Dim Sum's efforts to capture it. We swam around the bottom of the ocean once more, destroying Team Dim Sum's thingamajigs. There was another excruciatingly frustrating part with all the Quillfish, and we managed to end all of Team Dim Sum's controlled Pokémon. They gave up their quest to capture the Wailord and made off with this Wailmer instead. Don't ask me why. The biggie boy took us to the oilfield hideout where the Wailmer was taken to, and we met Sven again. We cleared the hideout together with Sven, saved Isaac from being used any further by Team Dim Sum, and employed the ultimate fart technique one more time. Just before the end of the hideout, we got a suspicious sounding voicemail claiming to be Keith, but that was a problem for another time. It was Kincaid time. He sent out the Gliscor he used to escape the cargo ship and used it to attack us. If you've been doing the side quests, this should be pretty manageable. Just make sure to bring a Stylo recharging Pokémon with you. After his defeat, Kincaid ended up being chased away by the Wailord, and we got promoted to Ranger rank 8 in the middle of nowhere. Sven took Isaac back to the Ranger Union, and we had to hurry to the Haruba Desert to see what was up with Keith and the Yellow Gem. Haruba Desert was located at the southeastern part of Almia, and somehow had this Giga Remo machine set up right in the middle. Apparently, this stall owner thought the Giga Remo machine was a coffee machine and popped it right on. We destroyed it and brought back order to this village. Well, off to Hippodon Temple we go. The game would introduce us to one last field move, the Sandfill. The Pokemon that could perform Sandfill was only Hippowdon, who was hard to encounter in its own right. The Hippowdon hides behind a wall of tornado gusts, and we had to time the gap to be able to touch it to start the battle. Once captured, we used the field move to enter the temple. Much like Almia Castle, Hippowdon Temple contained a number of interesting rooms. There was this room with the pouring sand, this room with the bouncy leaves, and this room that somehow contained the classic Pokemon arrow tiles. How it got there, I will never know. The boss battle for the Yellow Gem was a Cresselia, who was probably the hardest out of all the Guardians. In the later stages, it really could turn into a bullet hell game. Fortunately, it didn't take too long to beat it, and we exited the chamber after obtaining the Yellow Gem. Then we encountered the person who had been impersonating Keith. Heath. Nice. He offered to trade Keith for the Yellow Gem, and we of course couldn't refuse. How could we ever? Heath dropped a Magnezone for us to set free, and we returned to the Ranger Union. But not before completing more quests. We went back underwater, recruited the Sneasel for the cause, and helped even more of Almia's people. Upon our return to the Ranger Union, we were briefed on the findings of Team Dimsun's plans and how they're connected to Ultru Inc. Apparently, Ultru's new building itself was a giant Pokemon controlling machine dubbed the Incredible Machine, nice name, built for the purpose of controlling all of Almia's Pokemon. Chairperson Emma warned us about the final battle to come and told us to go on patrol and capture strong Pokemon. So, off we go to do more quests. We captured a few strong Pokemon, helped out Ollie with his quest, caught a few Claydolls that the stall owner thought was a Gigaremo, and the other quests available to generally upgrade our styler for the final fight. If you know what's coming for the final boss, you would probably be better off coming in at your best. Back at the Ranger Union, we learned that Sven and Wendy were the ones chosen for the assault on Ultru Tower, while we were assigned to stand by at the Ranger Union to protect it alongside Keith. Naturally, the game wouldn't let this part be boring, so upon going down to the lobby, we found Heath casually conversing with the receptionists. It seemed that the Ranger Union was under attack. We bested Heath's Electivire, battled Ice's Garchomp while Isaac's sister was being kidnapped, captured 8 Bidoofs at the same time, and that was about it. The objective of the attack was to kidnap Isaac, one that was successfully completed. Despite the setback, we were promoted to Ranger Rank 9. Together with Keith, we stormed Ultru Tower, fighting through the many grunt battles. This final part of the game was actually really long, with us having to sneak into the elevator shaft to gain access, disabling a beefy portal, getting the Yellow Gem, and saving Isaac and his sister. With the Yellow Gem in our possession, we made it all the way to the top to put an end to the Incredible Machine, only to have the gem sucker punched from our hands by Lavana. With Sven and Wendy still just circling around the tower unable to get close because of the Incredible Machine, it was up to us to stop it with Isaac. There were 3 layers in the upper tower, each guarded by Team Dimsun's elites. We subdued Heath's Rhyperior first, not in record time, but it was still fairly quick. Isaac did some sort of hack on the Circuit Ball's trap, and we went ahead and crushed the ball to disable the first layer of the Incredible Machine. Lavana's Magmotor was next, and we barely took any damage in this fight. Isaac disarmed the trap again, and we did what we do best, Annihilation. With the second layer disarmed, we went up another level. Ice stood guard at the last layer, sending out his Gallade. Gallade could be one of those Pokemon that is tricky, but this Gallade in particular leaves a lot of openings for us to work with. I actually took Misdreavus here as a partner Pokemon on a whim, but it ended up doing pretty well. Isaac tried to disarm the trap on the Circuit Ball, but Ice had foreseen the situation and upgraded the security. While Isaac was working on the ball, all the Dim Sun elites attacked us at the same time. I'm not quite sure if the game took it easy on me with this battle, but I felt like they weren't attacking as often as they could. As you can see here, I was mostly drawing normal capture loops whenever there was an opening, and it went quite alright. Intimidated by our might, Ice left the Yellow Gem with us, right as Isaac had finished disarming the trap. With this Ampharos caught just outside, we destroyed the last Circuit Ball. Forward was the trajectory that we were on, and we encountered a trap preventing us to go further. Isaac disabled it, but ended up trapped at the console. Here we go, it was time for the last boss. There is actually quite a lot to unpack here plot-wise, but I will try to summarize it in an unnecessarily short recap. Wheeler is a useless scrub. Blake Hall, the current president of Ultru, had been corrupted by the Shadow Crystal since his name-changing ceremony. He drove off his father, the previous Ultru president, and had been growing increasingly corrupted. He tried to demonstrate his power by summoning a Dusknoir from the Hippodon Temple, but it was easily subdued by our masterful capturing skills. Right as the Rangers tried to submit the Shadow Crystal with the power of the 3 gems, midnight arrived, meaning the Shadow Crystal was at its most powerful state. Blake Hall summoned Darkrai and we almost died, if not for Keith over here. Finally, he was somewhat useful. Blake Hall attempted to turn up the Incredible Machine to level Dark, but that didn't really work out for him very well. Darkrai went absolutely insane and tried to devour everything, and it was up to us to stop this thing. The first phase of the battle was one of those phases where you can't really damage the boss. I had somehow forgotten this and kept trying to draw loops around the Darkrai. All you had to do was wait until the Styler receives the 3 gems blessing, and then we could actually fight back. This Darkrai fight was probably the culmination of all the annoying captures in the game. This fool, and by fool I mean the Darkrai, constantly teleported around the screen, had that troublesome sudden attack like an Absol, and scatters on-field elements here and there. I'm not here to spoil this boss fight for you, because it honestly was really fun. All I could say here is just loop around when there's an opening, and don't get greedy. Again, treat this like how you would a Dark Souls boss. So once we calmed down this rabid beast, the Incredible Machine shuts off its influence over the Pokémon of Almia, and peace returned to the region once more. The people were happy, we were congratulated by the other Rangers and other significant characters of the game, and finally, we went back home to Chikola Village, spending time with our family. We were featured on the papers once more, and headed off to the Ranger Union. Chairperson Emma commended our efforts and promoted us for the final time, gifting us the position of Ranger Rank 10. Now we were really a top Ranger. It was time to complete all the side quests and browser. I will highlight the most interesting ones, starting with Ponte. If you've noticed, I actually kept my Probopass that I acquired while exploring all this time. It was for this quest. Ponte will want to see a Probopass, so that took care of that. If you have completed all the side quests before completing the main game, there is a good chance that you'll only be left with 20 quests. These said quests take you all over Almia again, visiting all the main areas and dungeons. We got another partner in the temple in the form of a Starly, captured a Regirock, accepted a quest from our mother that was very sweet. We even visited our boy Murph again, collecting all the evolutions for him. The Regice was next, and we continued scouring through Almia for the new Pokemon spawned in after the story was over. A Togekiss spawned at the top of Ultra Tower in the place of Darkrai, and we went to Chroma Ruins for the Registeel that was now accessible. We spent about 3 to 4 hours completing the quests, and we were left with this quest with Ollie. He really was feeling guilty about burning down Vienne Forest, so he enlisted our help in the search of a Celebi. The Celebi was located deep inside the forest after a Floatzel swim, and you had to enlist the help of a Doduo to be able to catch the damn thing. I tried chasing the Celebi on foot for a long time, before finally giving in and capturing the Doduo to help. The effort to catch the Celebi was much easier compared to the chase. But all in all, it was a good day for the forest. Celebi used its powers to restore the forest to its former glory, spawning in a couple of more Pokemon for the browser. The last 2 Pokemon in the browser was a Porygon Z and a Lickilicky, located in Olifield Hideout and Cargo Ship respectively. Once we captured those, it was time to bring the 3 Regis to the Ranger Union and see what Chairperson Emma had to say. Chairperson Emma mentioned something about a legendary Pokemon deep in Hippodon Temple, and we all know what it's going to be. We traversed back to the temple, dropped in the sandpit, and placed the 3 Regis on their pedestals. It was time for the Regigigas. I think this fight was probably the trickiest of the boss fights, as expected. Regigigas created a shockwave with every step, so you really had to stretch out the capture line to be able to sneak in some friendship points. I used Porygon Z's assist move for this fight, going for more of that kill or be killed strat. I would tank as much damage as I possibly could while going for the highest points I could muster. Evidently, it worked, even though it's not an S-capture. Rhythmi called us on our voicemail, and off we go to the Ranger Union to report in. Much like the previous game, all the Rangers came to congratulate us on our efforts for completing the browser, with each of them having something to say. Really made the effort worth it. However, no Shadows of Almia run is complete without running through and clearing the Capture Arena. Unlike the first game, the Capture Arena housed set encounters for each room, with the Pokemon having more frequent attack sets and a bulkier health bar in general. The Capture Arena consisted of 4 floors with a set number of rooms. All the annoying boss fights returned, more difficult than ever. The Capture Arena took me a good 2 hours or so, only being stuck for a couple of rooms. The last encounter for the capture arena boasted a Charizard, Flygon, and Salamence at the same time, but I felt like this fight was quite doable if we played a long game. Finishing it this way won't be enough to score an S capture rank, but it will be more than enough to finish the battle. And with that, we have completed everything Vanilla Shadows of Almia had to offer. There were the DLC missions of course, but as mentioned before, I tinkered with that a bit too late. If I wanted to do those, I would have to redo the save file all over again. One could argue that to 100% the game, we would need to S-rank every capture and max out our stylers, but I'm pretty sure getting to this point is enough. Another trip down memory lane has to come to a stop here as we end this video. Man, I feel pretty old saying that. I hope you enjoyed this video and game as much as I did, and as always, take care.